May 28th, 1971, a plane crashed into the side of a mountain near Roanoke, Virginia, killing the World War II hero, Audie Murphy. What led to this? How could drug bosses be involved? And who is this guy? Well, buckle up, because today we're going to be looking at the life and death of who is now known as America's greatest soldier, and the little-known conspiracy surrounding his death. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for watching. This is the part where I mention these are all just my thoughts. I'm not a historian or anything of the like. I just enjoy history and researching things, so do with that what you will. Audie Murphy was born to a poor sharecropper family June 20th, 1924 in Kingston, Texas. He was the seventh of 11 children. Although Audie Murphy's birthday is listed as 1924 in his enlistment papers, a biographer, David Smith, decided he was probably born in 1925 based on statements made by his co-author, David McClure, into Hell and Back, his California driver's license, and by Murphy himself. We'll get into how that happened in just a minute, though. The first interaction Murphy had with the law did not quite go as one might suspect. At 7 years old, Constable Lem Warren found Audie looking for food to take home to feed his family during the Great Depression. Lem gave him a job sweeping out the constable's office. Lem, along with the local bartender named John Cawthon, helped the Murphy family much in the coming years. Lem didn't just help during those hard early years. Lem protected Audie's family and helped the family get on food relief that kept them going. The downside to this was many people in that time looked down on people who were on food relief, calling them white trash and other much fouler labels. Murphy did not take too kindly to these remarks, especially when they were directed at his mother. This led to many scuffles. He fought, sometimes with words, sometimes with fists. Audie Murphy's childhood was shaped by poverty, hunger, and survival in the Depression-era Texas. Murphy watched his mother work herself into illness just to keep the family fed, while his father walked out on their life. By the time Audie was 16, he had lost his mother, and with her what little structure remained in his world. His younger siblings were sent to orphanages, while the older ones scattered working odd jobs. Audie wandered. He worked and slept where he could. Then came Pearl Harbor. For Murphy, just like many other young men at the time, it was a calling to defend what he loved so much. So with forged documents made by his sister in hand, the same papers which made him appear a year older, he strode into the enlistment office. The Marines rejected him. So did the paratroopers. To be fair, he didn't pass very well for an 18-year-old at only about 5'5" and 112 pounds, but Audie didn't back down, and eventually the infantry reluctantly accepted him. His unit, the 3rd Infantry Division, arrived in North Africa in February 1943, but Murphy joined them later that year. He first saw combat in Sicily that July during Operation Husky. September 1943, Murphy fought in the Allied invasion of mainland Italy, landing in Salerno. Italy was not an easy campaign. It was brutal, slow, and monotonous. The Germans and Italians were dug in deep, and every bit of ground gained was heavily paid for. On the 13th of December 1943, he was promoted to sergeant. Just a few weeks later on the 13th of January, he was promoted to staff sergeant. He was then hospitalized in Naples with malaria on the 21st, and he was unable to join in on the initial landing at Anzio beachhead. The crosses grow on Anzio, and hell is 6 feet deep. The poem Audie mentions in his book, credited to the character of Kerrigan, but written by Murphy himself, reflects the sentiment of that battle quite well. An amphibious landing, Anzio was meant to break through the German lines and race to Rome. Instead, it bogged down into one of the grittiest battles of the war. He returned on the 26th and fought in the First Battle of Cinsterna and was made a platoon sergeant in Company B following the battle. He returned with the 3rd Infantry Division to Anzio, where they remained for 4 months, taking shelter from the weather in an abandoned farmhouse on March 2nd. Murphy and his platoon killed the crew of a German tank passing by. Then he crawled out alone, close enough to destroy the tank with rifle grenades. Murphy continued to make scouting patrols to take German prisoners before being hospitalized for a week on the 13th of March with his second hit of malaria. American forces liberated Rome on the 4th of June, and Murphy remained in Rome with his platoon throughout July. August 15th, 1944, Operation Dragoon. The Allied invasion of southern France was a massive and risky plan meant to break the German lines from a different angle. By this point, Murphy had already made a name for himself among his fellow soldiers for being the kind of person who kept going forward even when things got bad. And they got bad a lot. Operation Dragoon was no exception. often under heavy fire and attempting to push through the entrenched German and Italian defenses. During the advance near Ramatuelle, Murphy and his unit were pinned down by fierce machine gun fire. Murphy crawled towards the source of the fire, launched a one-man assault. He silenced the German gunner before using the enemy's MG-42 against the remaining forces. Murphy's unit encountered another group of German soldiers. One of the enemy soldiers appeared to be surrendering, waving a white flag in the air. Murphy's best friend, Audie Tipton, approached. The German soldiers opened fire, sadly killing Tipton at close range. In a fit of rage, Murphy advanced alone towards the enemy position. Under fire, he seized a machine gun, opened fire on the enemy position, and in that single action, he took out 2 German machine gun nests, killing 6, wounding 2, and forcing the remaining soldiers to surrender. For this act of bravery, Murphy was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest honor in the United States. Murphy earned his first Purple Heart on September 15, 1944, in northeastern France, after being wounded in the heel by a mortar shell blast. Just a few weeks later, on October 2nd, he received his first Silver Star for single-handedly killing 4 enemy soldiers and wounding 3 officers at a German machine gun nest near Les Omettes Quarry in the Chalou Valley. 3 days later after that, alone and under direct enemy fire, he crawled towards the German position at Les Omettes, armed with only a radio. For over an hour, he directed his men's movements, ultimately leading them to take the hill, killing 15 enemy soldiers and wounding 35. On October 14th, he was promoted to second lieutenant on the battlefield and given command of a platoon. Just a few days later, on October 26th, while moving towards the Rovaniales with the 3rd Platoon of Company B, they were ambushed by German snipers. Murphy managed to capture 2 of them before being shot in the hip. Despite the injury, he returned fire and killed the sniper. He was taken to the 3rd General Hospital, and his injury left him out of action until January. The Colmar Pocket was a large area in the Vosges Mountains that German forces had control of since November 1944. On January 14, 1945, Murphy rejoined his platoon, which had already been sent to that area. Just 10 days later, they moved to the town of Holzwihr and faced the German counterattack. Murphy was wounded in both legs and received another award for his Purple Heart. A couple of days later, on January 26, 1945, he fought in his most well-known battle, and I believe Murphy's Medal of Honor citation says it best. In short, Murphy ordered his men to retreat and take cover while he jumped aboard an M110 tank destroyer, which was on fire, holding off the advancing Germans, which was 6 Panzer tanks, 250 infantry, by himself for over an hour and being attacked on 3 different sides while calling in artillery strikes. Even after being wounded again, he refused to leave, and once he ran out of ammunition, he went back to his men and led a successful counterattack. If this isn't the definition of above and beyond the call of duty, I don't know what is. For his bravery, Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, and his division also received the Presidential Unit Citation. On February 16, 1945, Murphy was promoted to First Lieutenant. Around the same time, he was awarded the Legion of Merit for outstanding service over the past year. After everything he had been through on the front lines, he was finally pulled back and assigned to regimental headquarters, where he worked as a liaison officer. Audie Murphy was recommended for the Medal of Honor by Brigadier General Ralph B. Lovett and Lieutenant Colonel Hallett D. Edson. On June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General A.M. Patch presented him with both the Medal of Honor and the Legion of Merit for his heroic actions. After the war, someone asked Murphy what made him do that. Why did he climb onto a burning tank to take on an entire German company alone? His answer? They were killing my friends. By the end of World War II, Audie Murphy had received every U.S. combat award for valor that was available. By June 1945, at just 20 years old, Murphy returned to the United States not just as a hero, but a living legend. He had fought in 9 major campaigns across North Africa, France, Italy, and Germany. He had been wounded 3 times, seen his friends die, and led men through some of the deadliest terrain in the European theater. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he had malaria through a good portion of it. Lieutenant Audie Murphy came home as the most decorated U.S. combat soldier of World War II, a record that still holds today, earning 33 military awards, including the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. France and Belgium also. presented him with their own medals. Murphy was welcomed home on June 14, 1945. He arrived in Farmsville, Texas, where the town had prepared for a celebration for their hero. R.B. Beaver stated, Audie would get the biggest reception that any Farmsville boy had ever got, whether he liked it or not. Beaver led a 20-car parade, and an estimated crowd of 2,500 people lined the streets to celebrate the living legend. The following day, on June 15th, was declared Audie Murphy Day. He addressed the crowd amidst cheers and applause. His return was also marked by national attention. The July 16th issue of Life magazine featured Audie Murphy on the cover, smiling in full-dress uniform, an issue I happen to own. After the parades, magazine covers, and medals, Murphy still struggled with PTSD. He had insomnia, depression, and often slept with a loaded pistol. A medical exam in 1947 showed he was dealing with constant headaches, nightmares, probably from the stress of everything he had been through. He relied on sleeping pills just to make it through the night. In 1949, Murphy published his war memoir, To Hell and Back. The book isn't written like a standard military autobiography. It's a semi-fictionalized account of the war that might sound strange coming from the most decorated soldier in U.S. history. But I think there's a reason. Murphy said that To Hell and Back wasn't just about him. It was about the men he fought alongside. So he created fictional soldiers who represented real people or combinations of them. Characters like Kerrigan, Murphy's loyal best friend in the book, who I believe is inspired by his real best friend, Lottie Tipton, or Johnson, Brandon, and Kalinsky, also reflect real soldiers Murphy served with, although still a fictionalized account. Quick note, it's hard to find exactly why Murphy did this, but by writing it like this avoids the dry, factual style of some military accounts. Instead, he creates a sort of story that feels personal and allows the reader a less dramatized version of the war. The book becomes a bestseller and praised not just for what it says, but how it says it. In 1948, Hollywood took notice. Murphy was assigned to a film contract with James Cagney. And while nothing major came out of this initial deal, it did help get Murphy's name out into the business. Still shy and unassuming, Murphy arrived in Hollywood with only his good looks and, by his own account, no talent. In 1949, he landed his first leading role. Murphy's personal life was showing signs of internal battle. In 1950, he married actress Wanda Hendricks. The marriage was rocky and short-lived. They divorced in 1951. 4 days later, he married Pamela Archer, a former airline stewardess. They had 2 sons, and this marriage would last until his death. In 1955, Murphy was initially reluctant, playing himself in the film adaptation to his book. His performance isn't flashy or overdone. If anything, it downplays his heroism. The film became Universal's highest-grossing movie until Jaws in 1975. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Murphy became a staple in westerns, and although he never rose to the fame as Roy Rogers, John Wayne, or Gene Autry did, he made quite a name for himself. He acted in over 40 films, including The Red Badge of Courage, Gunfight at Comanche Creek, No Name on the Bullet, and many, many others. And in 1959, Murphy had his own TV series, Whispering Smith. Murphy retired from acting after 21 years and subsequently bred racehorses and pursued various business ventures. His horses even raced at the Del Mar racetrack, and he poured a lot of money into the hobby. But behind the scenes, things weren't going quite so smoothly. Murphy struggled financially, he developed a gambling habit, and his investments didn't always pan out. In 1968, he admitted he lost over $260,000 in a failed Algerian oil deal. Even so, Murphy never made money in ways that betrayed his values. He refused to do commercials for alcohol or cigarettes, saying he didn't want to be a bad example for kids. By the mid-1960s, Murphy realized he had become dependent on the sleeping pills for PTSD, that he locked himself in a hotel room for a week, determined to break the habit. He beat the addiction on his own. He was also affected by the Vietnam and Korean War. Not the combat, but the way the returning U.S. soldiers were treated. This was the man who had been called a hero, and now he was seeing young soldiers come home to protesters, insults, and indifference. In addition to acting and advocacy, Audie Murphy also was a songwriter and a poet. He wrote several country and western songs, collaborating with artists like Scott Turner. Murphy was just 45 years old when he boarded a private Aero Commander 680 plane in Atlanta, Georgia. He was flying to Martinsville, Virginia on business, reportedly to discuss investments and a new venture. Along with him were 7 other passengers, including a pilot with a questionable flight record. The pilot, Herman Butler, held a private pilot's license with over 8,000 hours of flying time. However, he was not rated to fly under Instrument Flight Rules, the IFR, and only had 6 hours of experience in the Aero Commander 680. Before takeoff, the Aero Commander's pilot requested a weather report by phone. Deciding the weather along the route was safe for visual flight, no flight plan was requested and none was filled. Air traffic control cleared the flight and departed at 6:10. As the flight continued, weather conditions deteriorated, and about 2 hours and 20 minutes after takeoff at 11:30, witnesses in Galax, Virginia, 60 miles west of Martinsville, reported seeing a plane flying in circles in and out of the clouds at approximately 150 feet above ground level. Shortly afterward, the aircraft unsuccessfully attempted to land on a 4-lane highway northeast of Galax. After making a pass or two over the town near treetop level, the aircraft left the area heading west toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. The last communication with the aircraft was at 11:49, when the pilot contacted the Federal Aviation Administration Flight Service Station at Roanoke's Woodrum Airport asking for a weather report, saying he intended to land there. At this point, the aircraft had flown past its destination of Martinsville and was west of and below the peaks of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The latest weather report radioed by Roanoke, ceiling 1,000 feet broken, 2,500 feet overcast, visibility 3 miles in light rain and fog with mountain ridges obscured. The pilot did not indicate they were in any kind of trouble or report the aircraft's current position. The plane crashed into Brush Mountain near Catawba, Virginia. In poor weather and heavy fog, there were no survivors. The crash site was found 2 days later, fittingly on Memorial Day. Now, do you want to hear the conspiracy? Let me clarify. This is not a true conspiracy I'm talking about. Many of these events and achievements are simply not well known about, and documentation can be tricky to find. For my source in this coming section, we'll primarily be using Audie Murphy, Undercover, written by Larian C. Willis, which is a good source if you like researching this sort of thing. She is friends with Terry Murphy, who is Audie Murphy's son, and is co-founder of the Audie Murphy Research Foundation, where I found much of the information I covered prior. So without further ado, Audie Murphy was a part of the FBI and Los Angeles District Attorney's Organized Crime Division. Let's break down what I mean. You see, in the years leading up to his death, Audie Murphy wasn't just a movie star or a soldier. He was, on top of all of that, doing something arguably even more dangerous, taking on organized crime. Audie had become a volunteer consultant in the mid to late 1960s for both the FBI and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Organized Crime Division, because in the early 60s, someone very close to him, his niece, died from a drug-related issue. In other words, being his standing as a gambler, someone who enjoyed betting on horse track races, gave him the opportunity to go undercover and infiltrate to gather information on gangs and mafia members while attempting to stop the sale of illegal drugs, all while still being an actor. This brings us to Fior Fifi Brichuri. Brichuri was a high-ranking member of the Chicago Outfit, a major organized crime family that was involved in everything from illegal gambling to murder. He was untouchable until Audie Murphy. Murphy helped gather evidence to put Brichuri on trial for racketeering, conspiracy, and interstate transmission of wager information. All of them big charges. And Murphy was a key witness. Murphy wasn't just targeting Buttigieg, I don't know how to say that name, I'll fix it later. He was also following leads connected to the JFK assassination and had reportedly begun infiltrating the criminal empire of Carlos Marcello, the New Orleans crime boss who was suspected of connections to both the Kennedy assassination, nothing ever came of it, and corruption in national politics. Marcello controlled massive illegal operations throughout the Gulf Coast and had connections to political figures. Murphy was reportedly helping build cases against mafia members misusing Teamster pension funds, including apparently efforts to bribe President Richard Nixon, and if the case had gone through, it might have theoretically broken the back of organized crime in America, at least for a while. But then, Murphy's plane crashed. And what's more, just before his death, Murphy had been following leads related to Dalton Smith, A con man and fraudster, Murphy was trying to move towards testifying. He was running out of money, scrambling to finish a movie and reestablish a trust for his kids. He even deeded his house to his wife and tried to take out life insurance as if he knew something could happen. You could reasonably argue that this made him even more of a target, especially when it was discovered that he was also a deputy sheriff in Dallas working under Sheriff Bill Decker, someone connected with investigations into organized crime activity in Texas. Officially, the FBI, the NTSB, or National Transportation Safety Board, and everyone else who investigated found no conclusive evidence of foul play. Audie Murphy was flying with a pilot who wasn't rated to fly in this weather. He was in the middle of two major investigations, one into the misuse of union pension funds and another involving active mafia persecutions. He was a witness in a major federal racketeering case, but there's no proof. Just ideas and the unbelievably convenient timing of it all. Audie Murphy was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery on June 7, 1971, with full military honors. He is buried in Section 46 near the amphitheater. Throughout his life, Audie described himself as a fugitive to the law of averages. It seems the averages finally caught up. The movie he was never able to finish is called A Time for Dying, and still got released, negating the few scenes which were never filmed. Despite his wishes for a modest service, crowds gathered, friends attended, and fellow veterans saw him one last time. Even after his death, Audie Murphy's impact didn't stop. His advocacy for veterans helped spark national conversations about what we now call PTSD. And in 1973, the VA hospital in Texas was renamed to the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in his honor. You can't make this stuff up, or rather, you don't have to. Throughout his life, Murphy demonstrated a sense of responsibility to protect the innocent and fight injustice that left and still leaves impressions on people today. The last part of Murphy's book reads, "When I was a child, I was told that men were branded by war. Has the brand been put on me? Have the years of blood and ruin stripped me of all decency, of all belief? Not all belief. I believe in the force of a hand grenade, power of artillery, the accuracy of a Garand. I believe in hitting before you get hit, and that dead men do not look noble. I also believe in men like Brandon and Novak and Swamp and Kerrigan, and all the men who stood up against the enemy, taking their beatings without a whimper and the triumphs without boasting. The men who went and would go again to hell and back to preserve what our country thinks is right and decent. My country, America. That is it. We have been so intent on death that we have forgotten life. And now, suddenly, life faces us. I swear to myself that I will measure up to it. I may be branded by war, but I will not be defeated by it. Gradually, it becomes clear. I will go back. I will find the kind of girl of whom I once dreamed. I will look at life through uncynical eyes. To have faith, to know love. I will learn to work in peace as in war. And finally, like countless others, I will learn to live again." While there may not be any satisfying solution to who was responsible for this tragic event, what I did find in researching for this video is a tiny part of what makes America, America. And whether or not you learned anything from watching this here today, if I'm able to tell you a story that keeps just a sliver of American history alive, that's all I need. And thank you for watching. Alright, that's all I have for now. See ya! On a completely unrelated note, this is a photo of Texas Senator Price Daniel, the Narcotics Subcommittee Chairman, when he visited Audie at the Universal International Studios. And in 1971, a court awarded Murphy's widow and two children $2.5 million in damages due to the accident. Probably nothing, though.